welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Inside Track. We've got a fabulous guest on this morning, Keith Smith from Smith Training. How are you?
Good morning. Well, I'm fine, thank you.
Awesome. And as always, my trusty sidekick, how are you, Dr. G, Glenda Rivoallan?
Really good. How are you, Ryan?
Yes, very well, thank you. Hopefully you've
recovered
from your storms out in Jersey.
Yeah, it's all calm now, all calm. However, This is going to be a great session, this one. I've seen Keith before a few months ago. Very much enjoyed it, so I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. So probably the best place to start, Keith, because you were very humble to me before we went live on the podcast, saying you're just a tutor. Now that's not entirely true. So do you want to give us a rundown in terms of a bit of your career history, who Keith Smith is, and what you're currently doing now?
Wow. Okay. I did my first course with YMCA in 1992.
Wow.
Back then, there was no personal training. You either did exercise to music or circuit training. So considering I have no rhythm whatsoever, I did circuit training. I was so nervous going back to education. I did the one night a week for 6 months.
Wow.
It was incredible. I had two great tutors, and other tutors popped in who were really quite inspiring at the time. Once I'd done that course, I taught voluntary at the YMCA in Tottenham Court Road. And then at some point during that time, someone said, "Do you want to be a tutor?" So I went for an interview, and they said, "Yep. You'll never," and at the time they called it directing a course, and they said, "You'll never direct a course until you get a Cert Ed." So I went back to Lewisham College, which was part of the University of Kent, I do believe, and I did my Cert Ed, and then went back to the Y, and they spent every single waking hour developing me as a trainer, and I can't thank them enough. There's a massive difference, and I hope we talk about it, between becoming competent at doing something and then developing your skills. And there was a logbook that I had to fill out. It took me 3 years to complete it, and you had to get other tutors to sign you off, and you couldn't get the same tutor to sign you off. It was like incredible. And so I stayed with them till about 2010. Because I was freelance.
Wow, that's almost 20 years.
Yeah. I loved it. They were constantly developing, When you find a place that allows you to grow, right? Yeah. You don't want to leave. When you find somewhere that every day is about everyone around you growing and becoming better and learning, you don't want to leave. Yeah. Right? Because I was freelance with YMCA, and it wasn't a conflict of interest, I started to work for Life Fitness and Hammer Strength at around 2002, and had the opportunity not only to work in the UK, but had the opportunity to work in a number of different countries for them, and travelled a lot and supported the distributors in different countries around the world, supported the distributors' staff, and also supported the distributors' customers. And I worked with them until 2021.
Okay.
All of that time, it probably was a mistake to leave, but hey, we learn by our mistakes, don't we?
Makes us stronger.
And during that time, I've had the opportunity to work with some fantastic customers. Soho Gyms comes to mind. They're not with us anymore, but they was lovely. Absolutely fabulous. Yeah, they're not around anymore, which is a real shame. At the moment, I'm working for David Lloyd and supporting them with their onboarding of their new personal trainers. So they have 3 days of onboarding, and I'm very lucky to be involved in 2 of those days, and also supporting them with writing of some CPDs. And then I suppose it's just different customers around the country. At the moment, I'm assessing and quality assurance for St Mary's University, and doing assessments and qualifications. And it's been quite slow since coming out of COVID in terms of education, but there's definitely been a pickup, if you like. And then occasionally, when people are desperate, they allow me to speak and present, which is where I met Dr. G. To be fair, they don't allow me to do it very often, but on that day, that's what I do. So Barnsley
you do it more often than I do, Keith. So yes,
yeah, don't be so humble. I'd like to dive in there. With that huge experience that you've got, Keith. What would you say we do tremendously well in the industry, and what would you say is the one bear bug that, even if there was just one thing that you would love to solve tonight, what would it be in terms of the training side and how educated we are as professionals in this industry?
The one thing I'd like to change immediately is that we have a big emphasis on staff development. That is the one thing. I think you can get a qualification and prove that you're competent.
Yeah.
And that's important in terms of compliance and meeting the standards of the industry.
Yeah.
But if there was one thing I could change, it would be a big emphasis on staff development. Moving people up Maslow, moving towards that unconscious competence where their behaviours and skills are natural, and instead of thinking about what they've got to do, because those skills are now natural, they can focus on what the member wants.
Yeah, I love that. And would you do really well? Go for it, Ryan.
I was just going to say, just on that point, me and Glenda quite often talk about this very subject, in the fact that since we've started pushing people into personal training of freelance PT rather than which was probably all three of us' route, through gym instructor, personal training, teaching into duty manager, assistant manager, and so on, those sorts of routes don't exist like they did before. And I think what you're saying is that's a massive mistake. We've pushed everyone into freelance PT, and that staff development has almost disappeared.
Yeah. Ryan, I totally agree with that, but there could also be more of a push to do it, if you like.
Absolutely.
And please forgive me. Please forgive me for this. And there are loads of little nuances that I'm not even going to talk about. But there is a huge thing in our industry about learning the next shiny thing, because the next shiny thing is going to solve all our problems.
Yeah.
Right? And it's always about learning. And I'm not against learning. But what about developing the skills we already have?
Yeah.
What about mastering those skills of interaction, of teaching, of how you create an environment that makes someone feel special, sexy, naughty, dirty, filthy? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we talk about client journeys all the time.
In a good way.
Yeah, exactly. We talk client journeys all the time. And that, if you don't have that development and that growth, you almost just provide a product, because the staff don't then get into this habit of, we want to take that client on a journey to achieve their results.
At the risk of being really cliche, when you go to Disney World and you get the wow moment, right? We all love it. And we feel a bit embarrassed at first because we're just genuinely not used to that level of service.
Yeah.
So when these people come out and that's what they just do as standard, we're thinking this is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And actually, I know from watching you speak, Keith, that was my big takeaway when I met you, was how can we give the member an extraordinary moment every time? And I think that memorable, and that they're the only person in the room. And I guess we want to talk about the positives as well, but I can see why you exactly homed in on the idea of CPD, and that our training's not just a one-off, which is a very bad habit in our industry, that once people are qualified, that's it, they don't do much more. So I guess the question I wanted to ask you is, what do you think we do really, really well? What are you seeing out there at the minute that you think is worth celebrating? Just wondered.
I think that everyone I meet in the industry wants to do good things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a fact. When I visit the people that influence me, and I don't know that many people in the industry, to be fair, but when I meet people, I think all of them want to do good for the member. I truly believe that they have the member at heart. I just think sometimes we get lost along the journey, and I suppose that's my biggest concern, really, that everyone wants to do what's right by the member. I think that's our biggest thing, but occasionally we get lost, and what happens is we all tend to do the same, and no one wants to move away from things.
Yeah. And actually, is there anything that you've seen from your training head perspective on? Is there anything that you've seen in your travels recently that you got the wow moment? Just wondered. I think that'd be really interesting.
Have I got the wow moment? Do you know what? I had a wow moment on Saturday, right? I support PD approval, who support countries around the world in developing staff to be good tutors. And to be a tutor, I have to observe the delivery of a session.
Yeah.
And they have to video record it. And I just had a wow moment. I was in Costa doing the marking, and I'm watching this video, and this gentleman from Dubai, who was working his way towards his education and training qualification, delivered a lovely session around teaching and coaching on the gym floor, and interaction, and where to stand and where to position yourself and what to say. And I'm just sitting in Costa thinking, do you know what? I must have this big smile on my face right now, because this individual has got it. He's planned this session. He clearly knows that creating those environments are clearly important, and product is important, and session planning is important, because we can't lose focus on how product supports the session plan and leads the individual towards their goal. It would be wrong of me not to think that that's not important. But he was teaching the skills and behaviors that support the creation of feelings in the moment, and it's those feelings that drive behavior. So that was my wow moment, most definitely.
That sounds really cool. And it actually, because we're going to have a lot of club owners out there with teams, what would you say as the leaders of these clubs that we can do to build confidence in our teams that are on that delivery on the shop floor to just raise their game? What advice would you give the club owner? What would be the 3 top things we could do?
It's about practice. You've been very kind today, Dr. G, and said that you've enjoyed my sessions, right? And that's that's lovely of you. I'm a product of development. I'm not a product of learning. That's a fact. I'm a product that all through my life, I have been very lucky and surrounded myself with individuals, one, who are not afraid to give feedback, whether that be good or whether that be development.
So critical.
And if I was if they want, I would set up, even if it was 10 minutes or 20 minutes a week of development. This is what we're going to work on today. This is what you need to go away and practice. And then the following week, come back and show me, and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
And if there was, I mean, I know I'm being really sad now, but you know, the role of the instructor, the role of the PT in my mind is they have a role. I'm going to say something that's really controversial now, and I really
like that.
Really, PT and instructing on the gym floor is a performance. It is a staged event. It's a performance, and we are not giving the staff enough time to develop their own performance around their own unique identity. John Lewis used to call it retail theatre.
Yeah.
For me, it's fitness theatre.
Yeah.
I perform on the gym floor, and if there's any club owners out there, it doesn't have to be long, 10, 20 minutes a week of getting the staff together and thinking about how might you introduce the leg press? What words might you use with a beginner?
Absolutely.
What's the difference between teaching and coaching? When do you move from a teaching model to a coaching model?
My friend Keith used to call it, PT is a spectator sport, not an individual activity.
Yeah.
In the sense of it's theatre for your client, like you're saying, but it's also that whole gym floor. You are selling yourself every time you deliver a session. So it's a spectator sport because you want all those other clients or potential clients to look and go, I want some of that. And he was massive. Steve Harrison, his name, amazing guy.
Oh, I love Steve. Well,
yes,
Keith,
that's
it's
what
so
he always
funny
said.
you mentioned that about practice. This is what I always say when we talk about sales training, Ryan and I. If you look at Grant Cardone, he talks about the academy where his whole sales model is that he encourages people who have bought into his program that they practice with their organization every single day for the first 10 minutes of a shift.
Yeah.
They go into their practice time to keep developing their skills of selling. Now, when I owned my clubs, and I know you know this, Ryan, we had development time every single week where we had, and we did it sharp and sweet, but we did half an hour twice a week where we all came into the gym, one of the studios, and we would talk about one of the models, whether it was burn, vibe, or strong. We'd go through the model and we'd pick up one thing, half an hour, and we did it every week religiously. And I'm fully supportive of that idea that practice is critical and the club owner should give these people time to do that for sure. I love that.
Yeah. And, if you read Daniel Pink and Drive, right, and you read Cal Newport and Be So Good They Can't Ignore You, where you move from someone that's passionate about something, but when someone is passionate about something, they ask themselves the question, what's in it for me? Yeah. If you start to master and develop the skills, Cal Newport tell us you move to a different place where the question you ask is, what can I do for others?
Yeah.
So that when you get to a level of mastery, you fall in love with the job. And when you fall in love with the job, you then ask the question, what can I do for others? Which then means you have purpose and meaning, which also drives behaviour, according to Daniel Pink. So
yeah, I think the challenge we have, Keith, and it's not just with the fitness instructors or PTs or our sector, it's life. Because of instant gratification, we have this real problem that if people don't see that quick result within, immediately, they sometimes think it's not worth pursuing. So how do we get people, because I know this is your area of expertise, but the club owners out there are going to be saying, hold on a minute, it's also for them to come and, you can take a horse to water, you can't make it drink it. How do we get that absolute drive that Pink talks about to get people back in and understanding that their development is going to be everything for their future? How do we do that? Is it role modeling? Is it great leadership?
I'm going to be really outrageous now.
No, we like outrageous too.
I'm going to say, are we employing the right people?
Well, talk to us about that, because I think it's a big debate. I've spoke to an organisation that I'm working with right now, and because I'm more in wellness than fitness, I do think we need to be opening up the audience that have left our industry. As in, I'd love to see women coming back from having children, and the older male who is getting excluded from finance companies because they think at 50 they're too old, which is ridiculous. Well, tell me about why you think we might not be recruiting the right people. I think it is an absolute insightful point that you make.
Well, again, I'm probably not going to get any work once I finish the next thing that I pay. I know I don't look like it now. I know I've got no hair. I need a bit of Botox and I've got far too much soft tissue, right? So, I probably need a thatch job looking at myself right now. But here we go. I come from a background of sport, okay, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. But this industry is not sport. This industry is not sport. We might use the same science, but the context is different.
Absolutely.
Right? The content might be relatively the same, but the context is different. We don't work in sport. In fact, I would rather watch on a Saturday afternoon some sort of romantic comedy now on the telly than actually watch a sports program that's giving me the results. I mean, I've moved so far away from sport, it's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. I don't think we work in sport. I think we work in health and fitness and wellness. And I think what you've just said, Dr. G, is really important. And I think that the more we think about it. You've got to employ people that are passionate about people. I don't care what else it is. It's passionate about people. And let's say before lockdown, I did a small group training day for Life Fitness. And I turned up at the day at the venue, and a gentleman joined the group, and he said, I'm the fitness manager. I'm just going to enjoy the day. And I went, that's fine, not a problem. Come and join the day. He was the best out of all of them. Yet he had no fitness qualifications whatsoever. He knew he could legally, compliantly, he couldn't teach the class, but he was the best teacher of the day. He had the best personality. He had the best identity as a trainer. And I asked him what his background was. He said his background was in business, but then he told me that he did art and drama.
Yeah.
He was able to...
Absolutely. Like the theatre that you talk about. Ryan, it's so funny because we talked about this when I sold my club in 2020. I had tried, and I ended up, I did a lot of it myself, but I was making the mistake sometimes of always recruiting people from the fitness industry, right? And then the guys come in that bought my business and recruited, their manager had came from hospitality. Yeah. Best guy you've ever seen. Like if I just wish that I had employed him, right? Yeah. Like it was amazing because it was all about that memorable experience, the customer first philosophy. Yeah. And what can we do to make this experience feel like you're the only person in the room? And he was amazing. Yeah. And I think there's a lesson in that we sometimes prejudge, don't we? Because we think that we should get these people.
I'm not discouraging anyone to learn more about the science of exercise, because the more we know, the more we can write safe and effective and individualized programs. Yeah, but I think there's a lot that we can learn from hospitality, retail, tourism, and entertainment, and we can bring. In fact, after that gentleman, Dr. G, after that gentleman came on the course, I went and did a course in stand-up comedy, right? And it was a 3-day course, and my wife will tell you that I'm not funny, right? Right? And neither do I want to be a stand-up comedian. But my level of interaction as a class-based teacher and as a personal trainer went up massively. And then I went to Sadler's Wells, and I did a couple of weekends on acting for beginners. And again, I noticed it went up. And I know I do not want to appear on TV. These sort of things scare the life out of me, doing this sort of thing. So it's not that I want to get into that industry. I just wanted to learn those skills.
Yeah, yeah.
We always said it about, because I come from a hospitality background, so I worked for Marriott for 11 years. And I've always been in fitness, but Marriott was I worked in the leisure clubs and whatever there. But obviously, because you got brought into all the stuff that they did, I always find it very difficult when you go into a business and you've got this hospitality background and they just don't see it. And you're like going, guys, we are in hospitality. Yes, we're in fitness. Yes, we do. Fitness is our product. Yeah. But ultimately, we're dealing with people. We need to give people that memorable experience, that wow experience. Treat people like gold dust. And we just don't. We almost get them in and go, well, there you go. And then expect them to create their own experiences. And it's always amazed me when you come from that hospitality side where it's all about creating memories and experiences and wowing the customer and all that sort of stuff. And that's, for some reason, it's never transcended. Although we've got all these leisure clubs in hotels and everything else, for some reason that's never transcended into the greater industry as much as it could do.
I know that Keith talks about this, and he talks about something that's really important in all of this is the human motivation, right? Because there is a big difference. And I think that where people who come into your industry, who were successful in other industries, like a coffee shop enterprise, or I don't know, restaurants or hoteliers or IT experts, they come into the fitness industry and realize, oh my gosh, it's much more difficult than I realized. And that's because reality is we're only selling them the means to the end. We don't sell them the end, meaning if they don't put hard work in and do a lot of the other side of the bargain, they're never going to see those results. So you even did it when I met you, Keith. You were talking a lot about motivation and How does that play out here that makes our product technically more difficult because we've got that person's motivation, how they're showing up? How do we tackle that piece? Because that's really important.
It's a lovely question, and so here we go. We always have to stay focused on the long-term goal. There always has to be a focus there, but we have to create more moments. Yeah. We have to want them to come back. And to me, we don't focus enough on the moment. Mm-hmm. You know, what's happening here and now, the pleasure of learning a skill, the pleasure of achieving an extra rep, the pleasure of a little interaction and a bit of praise, the pleasure in correcting someone in the positive, but doesn't ruin their confidence. It's all about, I mean, Jesus, Dr. G, we even call it a workout. Jesus, someone's been at work all day and then they've got to go and work again. I'm blown away by that. Why don't we just call it a session? Why don't we just call it play? Doc Rivers, the famous basketball coach, there's a documentary on Netflix, and he categorically says, "I've never called it training. For my players, it's always play." We have to focus more on the moments, both in terms of achieving and being successful. You know, and the journey that we're going to go on today, and outlining and justifying what this means in the long-term goal. We have to think about the stages of change and where someone is in their head towards change.
Absolutely.
You know, someone might not be ready. Someone might be totally committed to exercise, but not yet ready to give up drinking, give up smoking, or start a diet. Yet all we do is pump everything onto them in one go. It's all, it's all about, to me, it's all about play. It's all about the moment. It should be what they describe as an autotelic experience, that session is self-purpose. There's joy in doing it, you know, and it's about asking the right questions, fundamentally listening to them and observing their behaviors, getting into their mind, finding out what their perceptions are, finding out what their expectations are, and then going on a journey at their pace. And I know that's cliche and everyone talks about that, but it's true.
How do we get the message across, though, to the industry, the people coming in, that, again, we have this slight challenge where some people could sit behind a desk, not speak to many people, be a lot lower energy, and maybe get the same hourly rate as what they might get in the fitness industry, and immediately, right? How do we get people to understand that life's ikigai, life's purpose is not just to make big money, but by serving people, that's in itself worth doing? Because I think we have an industry problem where they see us as not very well paid, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how we deal with that problem, because what you just described to deliver that experience is freaking tiring, and it takes a lot of effort. And how do we get people to see that as worthwhile? I mean, I'm just curious to see what you would think there, because I think that that's another little blocker for us.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of doing that, I'm a firm believer that it goes back to development of yourself and development of others. And as you start to develop the skills and you move towards mastery, you start to think about what it is you can do for others rather than what's in it for you. Yeah. So I think it purely goes back to the fact that it is about individual development, and I'm a firm believer that is just as important as the money I get paid. But I also think that freelance trainers, and again, I don't mean to be rude, and please forgive me, that price for a client is only an issue in the absence of value.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right. So where's your value? What are you offering? Right. And, you know, everyone sees value differently. So it is all about finding out where they are right now, what their perceptions of exercise are, and starting at their pace. You know, I truly believe that.
And I think you're raising another point, Ryan. We've talked about this a lot, that a lot of fitness instructors or Group X instructors might not see a clear or progressive career path. Because in clubs, a lot of the time, there is not, unlike other industries like the finance industry, for example, you see all these different grades and levels, and you can really see a clear career path. I just wonder, you know, how we make that attractive to people coming into our industry, because sometimes it's you're either a gym instructor or you're waiting for the management job, and I think
they've almost moved, haven't they, Glenda, to freelance. Everything seems to have shifted. It's even more so since COVID, shifted into this freelance, less staff, freelance, and it's like going, well, how do you then jump back in to be a manager or
you know, Ryan, you open up a can of worms there. We were having a really good debate the other day with a company I'm working with. It's quite an interesting thing you've just said there, because there's only 1 in 10 people that are truly suited to entrepreneurship in its totality. 1 or 2 out of 10. Because of the massive uncertainty, that, you know, complete, you never know where your salary's coming from. Yet our industry is now probably 8 to 10 the other way. And I'm not saying we can't make them more suited, but going back to Keith's point, are we actually developing people for their entrepreneurial flair as well as the technical piece of the job? Because if we're going to make them all freelancers, that's about, and yeah, I know it's my area, but that's about building resilience, understanding that change is normal and that we live in an uncertain world. And I genuinely think that we've knocked a lot of resilience out of our younger people. So we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole. How good a job are we doing of prepping them for that environment if we're not prepared to do that in an employed status? And I think it's an industry challenge that we've got.
Nah.
Don't know what you think to that.
When I think the qualifications, the way qualifications have delivered have changed massively over the years. And I don't want to go to back in the day.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I'm going to talk about it, right? I've actually experienced this. So back in the day, a gym instructor course was 2 weeks in person.
Yeah.
Right. And they did a week on, they went away and they came back.
Time.
Yep. 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm not saying we need to go back to that, but I'm just telling you what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this regularly. And other tutors who were around at that time will also back this up. They do the first week and they'd go away and they'd come back and they were a different person. They were literally a different person. Some of them had even gone so far as to change their life, to get rid of their partner. They would change the colour of their hair. They would actually come back a different person. Because the course wasn't just about compliance with the industry. The course was about their development as individuals. Mm-hmm. And education, to me, is not just about meeting the standards and being compliant. It is about, and I'm not an expert on psychology. I'm a tutor and I'm an assessor when someone chooses to employ me. But it must be about the development of the individual. Absolutely. And, you know, since coming back at the beginning of the year and doing more freelance work, I mean, you know, there are some training providers out there who have probably got some quality stuff online, and I don't deny that. But the amount of in-person stuff is drastically reduced. And when our industry is all about in-person, and don't tell me that it's not, because after COVID, digital dropped off a cliff.
Absolutely.
So don't tell me that it's not about in person. And I'm not blaming the learner.
Well, actually, if we could defend that it doesn't need to be, I think our industry's screwed. Because if we say that our industry doesn't need to be in person, people could just never use us. It's like we actually have to defend that argument. It's because what you said, when we get that human bond, the connection, that relationship, and that wow moment, that's why I want
even online training, Glenda. If you think about it, even online training, as Duff says, take away the sort of watches and stuff. But if you're an online PT, it's still all about people. Yeah, it's still all about personality. It's still all about creating moments. So whichever way, they don't have to be physically in person with you in the room. Our industry is still about people. So whichever way you look at it, and you're right, if you're doing all your training online, reading a book,
but here's the thing, and I'm really passionate about it, because when you are with someone physically and you get that psychological safety with the other person, they release oxytocin, and that's the connection hormone that bring you together. And that's why trainers have had a career, because for a lot of people, they need that motivational support. They need that encouragement to build their self-belief. And when we get those wow moments, hallelujah, we get that aha moment. And I think Keith's absolutely right. It's actually quite alarming, though, the little that we now want to come face to face to do the tough stuff, which is that training and development.
And you get that feedback. You get that instant feedback. Do you know what? Keith, you did this well. You did that well. You might need to think about this. You get all that. You get that learning from each other, right? And one other thing that I'd just like to say, if I may, around the human experience. I mean, let's face it, for the consumer now, fitness is free. Fitness and exercise is free.
Yeah, it is.
So if a trainer and an operator of a facility is not thinking that fitness fundamentally, I can go online now or social media and I can get a program, I can find out about exercise. And if you're not thinking about the human connection and what added value a real good trainer does for your business in terms of creating those feelings of trust and safety, of confidence, of competence, of enjoyment, then it astounds me.
Yeah. I can see the Keith Smith Academy here, Keith.
I'm not entrepreneurial enough to deliver that. Do you know what? I just enjoy what I do. Writing 1 or 2 days of training for someone, supporting them with staff development, still delivering level 2 or assessing level 2 and level 3. And fundamentally, at my age, I think you just got to do what you enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good.
Just out of interest, Keith, are we seeing a lot more? Are we seeing a good volume of people coming through for training? Because we had this period of COVID that almost sort of, it had a massive impact on the volume of PTs that were working in the business and stuff like that, because they suddenly realized they couldn't make any money. They went off and did whatever, and then a large portion of those never came back to the industry. So is it still vibrant in terms of people training, or have we got a recruitment issue? I mean, the clubs I work with, we're struggling to find decent PTs, but I guess we're seeing it from a different angle than what you would. Have we got decent kids entering?
I'm assessing on Sunday, Ryan. I'm assessing on Sunday, and since we've come out of COVID, the numbers of learners have been quite low. This weekend, when we're assessing, the number of learners is quite high.
Oh, okay.
They're going to move on to their personal trainer. And already for next year, the 2 courses of gym and PT that we're delivering next year, the numbers are also quite high. We've got to think about getting extra tutors and assessors in. That's
positive, because it's had 3 or 4 years where it's gone the wrong way, and we've not really replaced what we lost during that COVID period. It's been difficult.
Yeah, and the operators that I'm working with, specific, that they are quite happy with who's coming through. They're beginning to think now, perhaps we've got to train them in our beliefs, our values, and how that comes out in their delivery, how we demonstrate our values in our programming, and in our interaction. So from the small amount of people that I'm working with, numbers on courses are going up, and operators seem to be okay with the volume of staff they're getting. But I only work with a small amount of people. You know, I think I've got 3 friends on Facebook.
Well, you don't need many. You just need good ones.
It's all in person, Keith, anyway. Like you said, it's all in person. You don't need friends on Facebook. It's all in work.
What? For anyone watching this, it's clearly that I'm an individual of a certain age who's come from a different time, who doesn't really understand social media or online teaching. So I'm really coming from a place that the vast majority of people in our industry aren't coming from. And I totally respect that, you know. So there's always, you know, different sides to things. I'm not putting any blame on anyone when I'm talking here. I'm not putting any blame on the training provider. I'm not putting any blame on the learner.
Yeah.
Due to the situations that have happened over the last couple of years, we're in this position where a lot of stuff is done online. We've got to ask ourselves, okay, where we are with digital learning right now, what's appropriate online? What can be done online that's of quality? And what can be done online, what can be done in person that's actually gives them the knowledge, skills, the confidence, the behaviors to be successful.
Absolutely.
Because doing a qualification cannot just be about getting a certificate. It has to be about giving them the knowledge, skills, behaviors, and confidence to go out there and be successful. And if that's the aim of a qualification, it's not just a compliance. It's compliance as in SIMSPA, right? But there is a whole level of competency underneath that has to be assessed in an appropriate manner.
Yeah. So I'm just conscious of time. Keith, what would be, if I said to you, this is your elevator pitch to people who are considering becoming an instructor or already out there looking at development, what's your elevator pitch to them? And then we'll put the little elevator pitch out to the club owners next. What would you say? What's your parting message to these people?
If you're a personal trainer out there who wants to be successful, if you're an instructor out there who wants to be successful, what's your long-term plan? Who's your audience? Who are you going after? Not everyone is your audience. Yeah. Not everyone needs to know who you are, which is why I'm not successful, but not everyone needs to like what you do. Who is your audience? Yeah. What's your identity? Who are you as an individual? What's your mission? What's your values? What's your beliefs? And how do they come out in your programming, in your interactions? Yeah. And develop your skills on the gym floor. No one's going to pay for you standing, drinking a cup of coffee, leaning or sitting on the equipment. They want you involved in the session. Yeah. They want the praise. They want the correction in the right way. They want the observation. They want the listening. They want the questioning. They want to feel special. Develop your skills and watch your niche as well. And look out there. And, you know, I mean, Dr. Melvin Hilsden a few years ago said that in his 10,000 member study, I think it was, and I may be, please forgive me if I get the numbers wrong, but the peak window of PT is like females between 35 and 50 or something. And and what they're desperate for is education, and changing their appearance, losing weight, toning up. This is the hot spot for PT. Yet PTs are not focusing on what their hot spot is in their club.
Yeah.
You know, 55, is it 75% of the disposable income in the UK is held with the over 55s.
Absolutely. I've been
I don't see any trainer saying to themselves,
I know.
I'm about building confidence and competence with individuals over the age of 55.
And the laugh of it is they've got all the time in the middle of the day when these guys are quiet.
No disrespect. Everyone wants to be strength and conditioning coaches, and I'll take my hat off to you, but that's not the hot spot in our industry. You know.
And what's your elevator pitch, Keith, to the club owners out there that have listened in today?
Does that mean I sell myself right now?
Yeah.
If
Absolutely, you can.
It would be a pleasure to support anyone who's into thinking about developing their staff to create a better experience for your members, whether it be a 10-minute chat on the phone or whether it's more of a long-term commitment. It would be my pleasure that if there's something I've said in the last half an hour that's helped you, thank you very much for allowing me to do that.
Absolutely.
Well, I can tell you, you've got our vote, Keith.
Absolutely.
I watched a session of yours and participated in it, and I came out that room richer than when I went in, and that's our absolute acid test for us and what we do. And I would have no reservations for anyone out there. I think that if you really want to light some torch paper in your staff, I would reach out to Keith in a heartbeat. So thank you for that, Keith.
Definitely. One final question we've got for you, Keith, and we ask this to everybody because I think it's sometimes quite insightful. In terms of what motivates you, what gets you up in the morning, what gets you to do the job that you do?
I just like people. I just like being around people and truly just having a purpose. What's the aim of today, and how are we going to achieve that? By creating safe, comfortable environments and moving forward. That's what excites me.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time today. I mean, your passion comes across exponentially. I mean, it's fantastic to have people like you in our industry helping drive things forward. So really appreciate your time today. And we'll definitely get you on again soon. And just out of interest, are you at the IG conference at the end of the month? The Independent Rob's event?
Ryan, I went last Christmas on like a last minute thing, and please forgive me. I like all the things that are on LinkedIn. No, I'm not going. I know it's on the 30th, but I don't know whether someone like me is invited.
I'll get you a ticket if you want to go, Keith. We'll catch up afterwards. I'll get you a ticket because you're more than welcome. And I think the team, the guys that go there, it'd be a nice opportunity for them to talk training with you. So it might be worth it. I'll speak to Rob. But if we don't see you there, we'll obviously see you again around on the circuit. So really appreciate your time today. I've really enjoyed that. It's nice to have new people on the podcast, especially talking about training and especially with your enthusiasm about the industry. So really appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Keith.
No, bless you. And honestly, I don't get an opportunity like this a lot. Thank you so much. Bless you.
Oh, well, we'll get you back on, Keith. I think very, very valuable advice. And like I said, reach out to Keith. You won't regret it. And I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.